Hello. I'm just up. It's late at night. I'm tired of thinking about it, but if I don't continue the thought process now, on Thursday, March 13th at 9:50 p.m., I'll never be able to get to sleep tonight. I have been broken time and time again over the past few months since the November election and re-election of now President Donald Trump. The events over the past months have left me fraught with fear for the direction that our country is taking on a global and economic scale locally. I have seen some of the most insensitive opinions being voiced on all sides of any humanitarian conflict. And I fear that our world collapse is imminent because we are so divided over everything that we all hold dear. But some people cannot articulate that they have it better than others, and then they have a duty as a human being to help those who are in a less fortunate situation than their own. Income disparity in this world is catastrophic, above even climate change, in my humble opinion. Above even economic collapse, above even world divide. I believe that our country is on a trajectory of war. And rightfully so, because I believe that the leadership this country has elected this time around, and the direction that the leadership has taken since taking office this time around, is throwing us into conflict after conflict after conflict for reasons that he has no clue of why he's even doing it. I believe that Donald Trump is incapable of holding the office that he has. I'm simply going to say it. And I have a litany of reasons why I believe this is so. Mind you, I am not politically affiliated. I have not spoken before this on issues of grave importance regarding politics, gender, religious conflicts abroad, economic conflicts abroad, trade wars, boundaries, the ethos of the American value system, whether the woke society should go back to bed or not. That has not crossed my lips yet. But today, I just feel bound to speak. And it's not that I don't have opinions on all those matters that I just outlined, that there are conflicts all over the world right now about. But I just chose not to speak on them until it's just gotten so turned upside down that the entire world is in an uproar. It scares me, people, to know that a third of the United States voting population didn't even vote, didn't care, didn't have a clue that not voting would lead to the chaos we are encountering today. because we've elected a TV apprentice star, a man who thinks he knows it all, to run our country, and to do it his way and only his way. And if you don't agree with his way, then he's going to revoke your rights, and he's going to make you afraid of everybody else, and he's going to blame everybody else for your woes in life, and he's going to make you resent them, and he's going to make you hate them, and then he's going to make you kill them. You know why? Because he wants all the power. That's what a tyrant does. This is the man who's going to take us right into a recession. Whose fault are the egg prices? Who cares? What are you doing to solve it? Why was the United States involved in the Ukrainian war with Russia, protecting Ukraine's borders? Because long ago, the United States allied itself with most of Europe. And the Slovakian countries in between Russia and the United Nations of Europe, the European Union nations, these nations coalesced to form a conglomerate of countries that would defend the borders of these Baltic states from Russia's incursion, so that they were not incurring themselves closer to the European borders, closer to the Western Front, so they couldn't incur themselves into war-torn territories by just extinguishing these independent nations like the Ukraine, which has a huge border between the Russian border and the end of the Ukraine border into Europe, which extends itself vastly closer to routes where they can invade the United States like that. The United States was a part of NATO for how long and why? Because we're allied with these countries. We trade with these countries. We interact with these countries for each other's best interests. That's what free trade is about. That's what keeps us in this global economy together. We're not trying to get over on each other. We're just accepting the fact that some of us are better trained at some skills and can do it cheaper, and others of us are better skilled at other skills. And if we want to maintain our standards as one of the superpowers of this country, we got to raise our standards on education. We got to raise our standards on diversification and inclusion. We've got to raise our standards on training in the workforce today, because other countries are advancing so much faster than we are, and we're not able to keep up. This country is behind in education, and this country wants to cut the Department of Education. It wants to defund programs that give people an opportunity to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and actually get an education in a skill or a trade or a technical vocality that they can use today, that's going to be applicable tomorrow. Not be stuck in a workforce where you're bound as a lab rat from a 9-to-5 job, often working overtime with little to no benefit other than a few extra bucks so you can pay for your kids to afford a pair of shoes, or so that you can afford to give your grandmother or your mother some assisted living care in their retirement years, because their social security system is drying up. Because nobody's looking out for the people who've paid into that system their whole life, expecting a pension at their retirement years, only to find that Medicare and Social Security are being called entitlements that they're not entitled to anymore. By whose authority? Those people in the top echelon of society should take a couple pages from the philanthropy of the countrymen who founded this nation. The Rockefellers, the Chases of those ages, the Montgomery Wards and the leaders of industry. Those people didn't just create industry and create power sources and create infrastructure and create jobs. They also created parks and museums and cultural heritage centers and history archives and libraries. Those people cared about the welfare of the poor, and they gave to the needy, and they supported orphanages, and they supported battered women's shelters. And they supported the people who were the least of these, because our country was founded on Judeo-Christian ideals that we're supposed to be doing out for others like we would have them do for us if we were in the same situation. But for the grace of God, go any one of us compared to any one of us on the other side of the planet. We're all human beings made of the same ilk. We all bleed red. We all have the same amount of gonads, the same amount of organs, the same amount of tissues. Only some of us are screwed a little bit because our tissues or our organs are not functioning as well as others. Some of us have been blessed with the ability to afford Medicare or medical aid. Some of us have not. And we're reliant on government-issued health care. People who suffer from illnesses and maladies who can't afford health care, what are we supposed to do? You who have millions in excess wealth that you could never imagine some of the problems that others have. What are you doing with it? Do you think when you go beyond the grave, God is going to ask you, what did you do with all that money you had? How did you help advance my kingdom? What did you do for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine? Whatever you did for them, you've done to me. And whatever you didn't do for them, you didn't do for me. Free trade with these countries across the globe, from China to New York to Canada to Mexico. And I'm not talking about border disagreements and immigration right now. Right now, I'm just talking about trade. Something that's been part of this world financial organization since the beginning of time. Because let's face it, some of us are better at some things than others, and we can do it cheaper and more cost effectively, and we can trade those items with others. We all have resources in this world. That's what trade is about. We are interdependent in a global economy. Tariff shit is why we have wars. Because we inflict financial pain for monetary gain when it's so unnecessary if we compete on a global scale. When the playing fields are level, we up our game. And when our game is higher, we take the advantage. But when the playing fields are off with tariffs, the people who have the knowledge and the skill set, they have the better product but we're getting the shaft because we got to pay more for it. Let that sink in for a second. Even though we may think we're smarter, come on. We know who's ahead in the game for AI technology, for microcomputing, for air travel, in flying automobiles, for space travel. We know who's leading the charge, engineering-wise, in science, in math, in AI technologies alone. There's so many different vast ways to use the technology. And how many of us in America can keep up with learning how to do it? Because none of us have been trained on it. Our education system is failing us the opportunities for the future. That's why we have to invest in our technology education systems for now. This generation that's being raised today is our only hope for survival. We better damn well hope we train them well and get them activistic enough to do it on their own if we can't. Because it doesn't look like our government really gives a flying F about where our education system is going. But beside all that, let's go back to tariffs. Here we are dismantling education systems, but we can't understand why we're doing it. Because economically, we're blind to the effects of not having those tariffs and those free trade agreements to keep our economies running at the low rate that we are, relatively speaking. Our rates of inflation, our recession is going to go through the roof, and people are going to be unemployed by the buttloads. Mark my words, buttloads of people. I remember in 2009 when the housing bubble crashed and there was a 14% unemployment rate. And I was a restaurant owner paying minimum wage, and that's all I could afford because nobody could afford to eat out. And I had just started this business, and I walked into a recession. And I said, well, this was my first taste at what life was going to be about. And I was going to try to do my best to do one thing and one thing only: serve good food affordably and have fun doing it. And I'll be darned if I didn't do that for twice as long as they gave me when I walked into town. Because as I was passing out the flyers in the town of my restaurant's offerings, it was funny. I was going to the local, bars that were open late night, and I was offering them a food menu, and they said, "We give you 8 months." Never met these people in my life. Town of 16,000 people in the middle of cornfields with a 14% unemployment rate. And they called it pretty, sharply right off the bat before I even opened the door. When I was preparing to stock my shelves and set up my equipment, we give you 8 months. And I lasted 16 months. But for the fact that I was living on my own and couldn't afford to maintain my own expenses, even if I could maintain the restaurant's expenses, it was still not viable for me to live on my own. So I ended up selling the business. But that's what a recession looks like. I believe that what we're facing is going to be astronomically more difficult. Because not only is our housing market crashing, our entire economic system is about to crash because we're not going to be able to afford to import anything. We're not going to be able to afford to pay people to do anything other than produce an inferior product for ourselves. We're going to let storehouses of food disintegrate into mush. and collapse our world economy, disrupting food supplies, and all because Donald Trump doesn't understand that free trade is how our economy as a global society works. So what is he doing? He's alienating our closest allies. Our closest allies. He is alienating our closest allies with these trade disputes. And our closest allies are the ones who, though they haven't been as mighty in military, they were very much a part of our raw economy. We are dependent on each other to sustain in a global economy. Even our enemies will tell us this. But the fact that we're sitting here arguing this stuff makes our enemies jump for joy, because we are setting ourselves up for collapse. And they can weather the storms better than we can. China and Russia dominate the stage when it comes to their natural resources. They dominate. They just do. But so do Canada a little bit, and so does the United States a little bit, and so does the Middle East a little bit. And we can sit here and say, well, we're standing on the side of freedom and democracy. But those other countries, they have longer histories than we do. And they have a lot more internal strife among their countries than we could ever understand the complexities of. Millennia-long generational wars over religion and political, ideologies of whose borders are where. And though one side may take a stand and say the other is corrupt and doing it their way, that's the only way they've ever known. For thousands of years, they've ruled with those iron fists because that's the only way they've ever known. When you grow up in a society of a dictatorship, that's the only way you've ever known. But we, as the American people, should know better. Because we didn't grow up in a dictatorship. We grew up protecting other countries from dictatorships. We grew up protecting other countries from injustices and intolerances and catastrophes. We grew up on the side of being the merciful. We knew that country, if his house was on fire, if our neighbor's house was on fire, we're not going to argue with him about the price of the garden hose to put it out. We're going to give him our garden hose. Because we'd expect them to do the same thing for us. And when I think about how Russia or China could very easily make alliances with our newfound enemies and our former allies of Canada and Mexico, just as under Cuban influence, when Russia was about to install the Cuban missiles, the United States, under JFK, said, "You better back down, Mr. Russia, or we're going to do something even graver." And the Cuban Missile Crisis was averted. But, Mr. President, if the Cuba Missile Crisis didn't scare us, and it didn't scare them off, what's to stop them now that we are destabilized from Canada and from Mexico from making it the Canada Missile Crisis or the Mexican Missile Crisis, Mr. President? What's to stave off the the Russians, our adversaries, from moving into the Ukraine, taking over the Baltic nations, overthrowing the European Union with the aid of the North Koreans and the Chinese. And who are we going to fight with? Who do you think you are, taking a side against the rest of the world of democratic leaders that we've been allied with for tens and hundreds and thousands of years? I mean, our ancestors all came from somewhere else. Where did we come from? Where did you come from, Mr. Trump? I'm sorry. Respect due. President Trump. Where did you come from? Because you're not of Native American tribe. So your family had to have come to the New York State from somewhere out there in probably a Slovak nation. From your height and your complexion, it looks like you may even have subtle Irish tones or Scottish tones, maybe some Spanish heritage, little salsa in your voice. But all joking aside, we're all from somewhere. So let's think about how close we want to get over the next few years with these countries, or how divided we want to be from them. Because when the poop hits the fan, ain't one of them going to come and run into our aid when we've alienated them all. And when the economy in the world collapses, and we were the cause of it all, those other countries are going to be able to sustain themselves. We're not going to. And I'm not saying that these tariffs will stay in place and we won't sit down at a table somewhere and say, are you kidding? Do you really need help understanding this stuff? Because we can really help you understand where all this is coming from. I mean, we're not going to talk to you like you're a stupid kid. You obviously got some intelligence, Mr. Trump. You've obviously got some intelligence, President Trump. But this is some big, heavy poop. And these are 1,000-year-old conflicts. And you may be able to dictate a boardroom really well. But as far as governing this country, I think you gotta help. You gotta ask for help where you can get it. Because you're really not doing yourself, your country, or the world any favors. To those Trump supporters who have been diehard neo-Nazi, fascist regime, whoever you think you are, God bless you. Hatred is sadly a learned family trait. Nazism and Hitlerian regime, in my personal opinion, and it's just my personal opinion, you're entitled to your own, and I'm respectful of that, but I think it was wrong. I think it is wrong to say yours is a superior race to all others, and to anticipate the annihilation of anyone who disagrees with your ideologies. That is a fascist dictatorship, and it should be the most reprehensible of governments, to be detested by any humanitarian relief organization. Worldwide, we have to take a stand against fascism. I'm sorry if that offends some of you. I understand your belief that you are supreme. It's what you were taught since you were a child. But at the end of the day, people are going to all bleed red. We are all going to have brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and mothers and fathers who are in dire straits. And we need to help them, lest we perish with a cold heart. And I don't care if they're your neighbor or your friend or your enemy. I don't care if they believe in a different God than you or a different existential outcome than you. We are human beings. Your children and their children are human beings. Would you dare kill a child of another race, religion, ethnicity, gender, orientation? Would you dare kill anyone who believed differently than you because of how their child believes they are better or worse than you? Do you know what it means to be impoverished in this world? Do you know how many people are dying of hunger-related diseases in this world? Do you know how many people are living in cold city streets in this world every winter, dying of the elements? I want to know, Mr. President, what are you doing about the people in your own backyard? We have commercials every winter for cancer treatment centers, curing childhood diseases. We have commercials for animal cruelty centers, keeping animals in from the cold and keeping them fed and nourished and cared for by veterinary care. And we have elderly who are in assisted living centers that are vastly underfunded to care for them the way they need to be cared for, dealing with Alzheimer's and other neurological disorders of old age. What are we doing for them? Those who've worked tirelessly to make the fortunes for the rich so that our country could flourish under their provision. When it was time for them to retire, are being stripped of their benefits that are entitled to them. Yes, they are entitled. This isn't some great Ponzi scheme that you pay into until you take your cut. This is an insurance program that we've been paying into our lives. We absolutely feel entitled to this because we're no longer able to care for ourselves, because we weren't able to save more than a living wage, while the wealth disparity in this country is incomprehensible. I'm speaking to you in the middle of March in a Midwestern town from the back of a 2000 Chevy conversion van, where I've lived for the past 5 years with no heat or air conditioning For the past couple of years, I've been blessed with 2 rescue kitties. One I found on the road, and another I found at a shelter, who comfort me when I need it, as I'm struggling with mental health issues and trying desperately to secure Social Security help. For PTSD and major depression, anxiety with panic disorder, circumstances that I have no control over have led me to suffer with, traumas that I've had to deal with my whole life. Do I need your pity? No. But while I'm dealing with it, trying to get help, I need help. Afford me the opportunity to get the help I need. And motivate me. Don't kick me when I'm down. Motivate me to help me get back up. Because my heart condition right now is so below hope that I have to reach just to maintain the surface. There are days that I don't feel like getting out of bed because I am that drained of energy, which is why I don't take political stands. This is so aggravating, and I feel the hoarseness in my throat as I'm speaking to you. But I gotta say it, because I'll never have the energy to do it again. And it's getting to be too much of a burden for me to hold. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it loud and proud, and I don't care who believes that I'm wrong in saying it or who believes I'm right in saying it. I love the Israeli people. I love the Israeli people. Having come of the Judeo-Christian faith, I believe we are to be allied with those who the God of the Bible loves. And so as a Judeo-Christian man in his 50s, I love the Judeo-Christian world. I love the Jewish people as a nation and as a country and as a people who were chosen by God. And I don't care if this offends people or confuses people. This is my belief. I love the Palestinian people. And I love the Muslim nations of the world. I love Arab people. I love Hindu people. I love Buddhists. I love atheists. Some of my funnest conversations have been with some atheists. Some of my funnest conversations have been with Jewish people. I enjoy the liveliness of discussion about religious stories and values and ways of thinking. I think we all bring something so unique to the table that it's really sad when we can't appreciate the differences that we bring to the table, but we can stir up fights about them. Because I think deep down inside, we're all saying a little bit of the same thing, even if we're coming at it from different backgrounds. And like I said, when it comes to cultural and religious wars that have gone on for thousands of years, I am 53 years old. I live in a nation that was not the nation of my grandparents or my great-grandparents. I don't know all the conflicts around the world, but I believe that for thousands of years, men and women have fought and died on both sides of the battlefields. And I think that was senseless. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that we're human and we're here. Which means that we obviously have a purpose that is greater than ourselves. And I don't think it's to dominate the rest of the world. I don't think it's to cause ourselves to be understood by the rest of the world as the supreme authoritarian leader to the exclusion of all others. That it's our way or the highway. That we have the best of the best of the best in everything, and nobody can compare to us. Because we delude ourselves if we think this way. And if we try to tell other people the same thing, we delude them too. And we're finally getting woke. Sorry to use that word, but those of us who have been woken for a lot longer, we kind of try to tell you folks. But the more you're recognizing all the inconsistencies and the trajectory of where we're going, and all the lies and all the propaganda, the more we're recognizing these things happening, the more we're seeing planes and rocket ships fall out of the sky because we're losing air traffic controllers. And we're losing our marbles when we're going against our most formidable allies in trade wars and disagreements over foreign policy. What are we doing? We're overturning centuries of progress of this baby nation democracy called America. It was an experiment from the start. Let's not ruin it. We've come so far. We're just turning it upside down. And we're taking everybody else with us. Right into the depths of hell. And it frightens me. If we don't do something now. And then I opened my eyes to Instagram reels of rallies across the globe saying, America, we stand with you. We're sorry you're led by an imbecile. And we're seeing rallies across the country, in this country, united, saying, We love you, other countries. Please help us. Please help us. Please help us organize our efforts and get those who are unwoke to wake up. Smell the coffee. Quit drinking the Kool-Aid. They're trampling us under their feet, and we have nothing to say. Wake up. Help wake us up. Help us get those who are unwoke to wake up, because our world is at a precipice of collapse. And we all see the gravity, except for those unwoke individuals who will stand behind the man behind the screen, pulling the levers and switches. It's not the wonderful Wizard of Oz. He's not the wonderful Wizard of Oz. This isn't a dream anymore. This is reality. This isn't a television show. This is reality. The prophecies of the Bible that talk about the end times talk about the coming of an Antichrist. And this is the time we need to be wary of what we're doing, because some of us will not have to face the fire. And I thank God, and I pray God that I'm on the right side of that one. But at this point, I only presume to know what I believe in. And that it is a sure thing that we are in crisis. And so I pray that to each one of you around the globe, wherever you are, whether you pray to God or not, whether you pray to Allah or the Buddha or Confucius, whoever you pray to your God that this will come to a peaceful resolution for all our sakes. And may the last God standing win. Like I said, I believe that there is a hope. And my hope is that at the end of the age, the God of the universe, the God who created heaven and earth, will reign victorious, not to the detriment of any other human being on earth, but so that we can all grow under the one true God, in peace and prosperity together. Because that, I believe, is what is being prepared for us in this very moment, is a peaceful and prosperous world to come under one God who will reign till the end of the age. But for right now, I know that Donald Trump is not God. Nor should he be relegated as such. Because a God of peace does not inflict this kind of chaos. The God of peace that I know of the Bible does not inflict this kind of chaos. And any Christian evangelical that I know of would tend to agree with that statement. Any Christian evangelical would tend to agree that Jesus was there to feed the poor and to help the widow and to take care of the hungry and to take care of the orphan and to help those who need help. And if you have something that is your time or your talent or your treasure, you're not to hold it, but you're to use it to help other people who don't have it. The talents and the treasures that Jesus spoke of in parables, he said, came back the master and said, "What have you done with the stuff I gave you to do with?" "Oh, I dug it up and put it in the ground, or I invested it." But what about these people over here? These were my brothers and sisters. What did you do for them? What good is it in the ground? When your body dies and you're sitting in the ground, are you going to be worth any more valuable in the ground in the richer side of the cemetery plot than in the pauper's corner? I don't think so, because at the end of the day, we all face judgment for what we've done with what we have. And to those he's given a lot to, a lot is expected. And I thank God in this instance that I'm poor. Because I could barely get by with what I got. But I'm joyful because I know that I have a future that is incorruptible and undefiled and that doesn't fade away, reserved in heaven for me. That's a promise that I read from the Bible. So whatever happens on this earth here, it's all going to fade away. And what I can do to make a difference in other people's lives while I'm here on this earth is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I would urge you, wherever you are, to remember that you're part of this species called human. Regardless of where you grew up, or whether you're circumcised or not, or whatever your skin color or tone, or your ethnic divide, we all have blood that bleeds red. We're all part of the human race. And all the other stuff doesn't matter. We've got to look out for each other. Can we please try this? Please. I need your help. People of the world, I need your help. None of us in America can do it alone. We need to wake up the world. We need to be a woke world. Please, people of the world, pray for us.